Recently, it was announced that Tony DeAngelo was going to be heading overseas to play in the KHL in Russia. Therefore, I decided that it would be interesting to explore how and why the defenseman wasn't able to attract a single NHL team to pay for his services. Firstly, though, if you're new to my channel, I'd love for you to subscribe. I have a lot of videos that will be dropping throughout the season that I hope to share with you. And with that, here is why Tony DeAngelo failed in the NHL. Our story is going to take us back to the early 2010s. DeAngelo, who had decided to move away from home as a teenager, left New Jersey for Ontario, Canada. Reason being, he had secured a spot on the Sarnia Stings roster and had aspirations of making it to the NHL. Even though most watching obviously know that DeAngelo was drafted by Tampa, his behavior early in his playing career proved to be challenging for some to deal with. Going all the way back to 2014, the defenseman's behavioral issues began to become evident. Now, anyone who's played sports knows that emotions run high and tempers flare in the heat of the moment. However, nothing can excuse what DeAngelo ended up getting suspended for here. According to an article which I'll link below, DeAngelo was suspended on 2 different occasions for using, quote, homophobic, racist, sexist, and other derogatory language, end quote. So he was suspended for using terms of that nature. Even though we don't know exactly what it was one of those things, for sure. While yes, this is troubling, the fact that he actually said these awful things to a teammate rather than an opponent is even more shocking. The referenced article was published months prior to the NHL entry draft. Interestingly enough, DeAngelo was ranked 10th amongst skaters before he was suspended a second time. And unsurprisingly, some teams made a hard pass after they learned of the repeated offenses. For the sake of time and a certain kept narrative, we're going to fast forward a bit when it comes to DeAngelo's career. If you'd like to know more about what took place between the Tampa and New York era of his career, be sure to check out my previous video that goes into more detail. The trend of DeAngelo butting heads continued as he settled into playing in the city that never sleeps. At the time of his debut game for the Blue Shirts, DeAngelo had begun representing his 3rd NHL team before his 23rd birthday. Technically, he never played for Tampa Bay and only played for their minor affiliate, but this still speaks to the track record that he was beginning to receive. By the time the unforgettable day in January of 2021 transpired, DeAngelo's reputation at the time was already fragile at best, due to a rumor that had since been debunked going around about him discriminating against his teammate K'Andre Miller. DeAngelo had been skating on thin ice with the NHL world. However, it was after the Rangers lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins in overtime that DeAngelo yet again lost it on a teammate. This time though, that teammate didn't just take it. As I alluded to, the Rangers lost to the Pens in OT, but the goal that was scored was the result of some poor communication between DeAngelo and goaltender Alex Georgiev. At the time things transpired between the teammates, we didn't really have the full story, or at least one side of it. But DeAngelo recently shared his side of the story on the podcast Morning Cup of Hockey. Coming down the tunnel, I yelled at Gorgie, "Make a effing save," DeAngelo said. So if I didn't yell at Gorgie wasn't going to turn around and try and do anything. That's a fact. Obviously, I started it. I wasn't thinking what happened next was going to happen. That was a surprise to me, he says. Then DeAngelo recalled that Gorgiev turned around and headbutted him, goalie mask to player visor. DeAngelo then responded by hitting him in retaliation with his stick. This whole altercation altered the course of the defenseman's career, as he was put on waivers not long after. And since he cleared, DeAngelo was paid $4.8 million by his former team to do absolutely nothing. This really speaks to how badly the Rangers didn't want him anywhere near the locker room. But fittingly, DeAngelo moved on and found work in Raleigh, a team that has successfully rehabilitated players with known attitude issues. And for a short amount of time, the marriage between DeAngelo and Carolina seemed to be a good one. He thrived offensively as he was able to record 51 points in 64 games played. While becoming an integral part of the Canes' power play, DeAngelo notched 20 of those 51 points on the man advantage. But as you'll quickly see, DeAngelo became a hot potato between the Flyers and Canes. Going in though, many believe that DeAngelo may have met his match behind the bench in John Tortorella. Knowing Torts' no-nonsense and team-first mentality, many believe that if anyone could get through to DeAngelo, it was him. Unfortunately, that couldn't be further from the truth, as DeAngelo had an extremely rocky tenure with Philly. Despite the fact that the defenseman had a decently productive campaign as a Flyer, Tortorella confused many as he made the choice to bench his player for the last 5 games of the season. As the media pressed the bench boss for answers, it quickly became clear that his banishment to the press box had nothing to do with on-ice play. According to an article that I'll link below, at the time of the benching, the Flyers were down to only 5 D-men. By the time the team's back-to-back games commenced within the 5-game stretch, Torts admitted that his team was very tired. When questioned, the coach was tight-lipped, saying, "I know that's probably a big topic for you guys. Tony didn't play the last 5 games, so something happened, right? That's going to stay between me and Tony and the team," he says. Unsurprisingly, though, Tony wasn't as reserved when it came to his time to expand on the benching. Do I agree with what happened in the last 5 games? Absolutely not. I think it's ridiculous that I didn't play the last 5, DeAngelo commented. So here we're seeing yet again that Tony was having a setback in his career, presumably for attitude issues. We can only assume, but considering the fact that months later DeAngelo was bought out by the Flyers, it really makes you wonder what exactly transpired. Anyways, somehow, the defenseman was able to pick back up where he left off with Carolina, as he was signed to a modest $1.675 million deal. However, he quickly found himself yet again being a healthy scratch by another coach on another team. By the time it was all said and done last season, DeAngelo was only allowed to participate in 31 contests and recorded 11 points throughout. He averaged just over 14 minutes a game, which is his lowest total average time he's had in his career. Now obviously, only a small part of DeAngelo's story has been told, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it than we fans know today. But it's incredibly sus that DeAngelo was unable to secure a contract from any of the 32 NHL teams this past offseason. Even though, yes, he has had one offseason with Carolina, just knowing how many struggling players that we've seen get a chance before, it really makes you wonder if it was indeed DeAngelo's attitude that was the main factor here. Currently, the defenseman is playing his debut season in the KHL and is representing SKA St. Petersburg. In conclusion, it's going to be interesting to see how DeAngelo will pan out in Russia, and if he'll ever return to the NHL. Again, if you enjoyed this video and aren't subscribed, I'd love it if you could hit the subscribe button and join this great community. And if you're already watching my content on the regular, consider joining my Patreon. For just the cost of a cup of coffee each month, you can receive video uploads weeks in advance and monthly shoutouts from me. You'll also be privileged to unseen channel analytics that are uploaded monthly. Simply click the link below to get started. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.